all across America and around the world. This is Veterans Radio. This is Veterans Radio.
Good day. I'm Jim Fossone. I'm the officer of the deck today here on Veterans Radio, and thanks for joining us. We've got some interesting stories for you. We always want to remind you you can find more about Veterans Radio at its Facebook site or at the web, veteransradio.org, where we're on the web 24/7. You can find a lot of our podcasts there as well. We post new ones every Tuesday, so you can get a new story, a new interview, something you didn't know before by going to veteransradio.org. And before we get started, we want to thank our sponsors. First up, we want to thank National Veteran Business Development Council, nvbdc.org. It was established to certify both service-disabled and veteran-owned businesses. You'll find out how they can help your business by going to nvbdc.org. We want to thank Legal Help for Veterans. Legal Help for Veterans fights for veterans' disability rights all across the nation. You can reach them at 800-693-4800 or on the web at legalhelpforveterans.com. Dale at veteransradio.org or Jim at veteransradio.org to get more information, but we'd love to have you come out, and we'd certainly love to have you sponsor. We just want to remind you that Veterans Radio podcasts are available on all your favorite streaming platforms, including RSS.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and Rees Across America Radio. Today we're going to hear a couple of interviews kind of centering around the United States Navy. One about a horrific loss of life in ship in World War II regarding the USS Indianapolis, and actually some connections to a facility in southeast Michigan called the Grosse Pointe War Memorial. You'll find this fascinating, including some history that was lost but then found. And then we're also going to talk to a Navy veteran and about the importance of shipbuilding and competition with the Chinese Navy. Both are going to enlighten you, even if you're one of those Army pukes. So listen in, you'll learn something. We want to welcome to Veterans Radio today, Betsy Alexander. She is the resident historian at the War Memorial. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that because that's kind of an unusual both job and location that we want to talk about. But what we're really focused on here today is an article that she wrote about the USS Indianapolis disaster and the men from Michigan who got lost in that World War II sinking of a destroyer, which was a big deal. Betsy, welcome to Veterans Radio.
Nice to be here. Thank you.
Well, as a resident historian, you get to kind of pick and choose, I think, subjects maybe you want to talk about. How did you decide that you were going to write Hell Gone Mad, which is the story about Michigan's men of the USS Indianapolis disaster?
Well, it was an interesting thing that happened. A lot of my stuff happens by happenstance. I had some gentlemen show up at the front desk, and I got a call, and it's like, Betsy, we don't know what they want. They are looking for a plaque or some artwork, and they're looking for you. And I went, okay. So the piece of artwork they were looking for was a rather large piece of the Indianapolis. It was an artist's rendering, and it had supposedly signatures from some of the survivors at the bottom. And it was supposed to be here. And I looked in the usual spots where this artwork would be kept at, in the veterans room and the hallways surrounding the veterans room. And I came up with nothing. I went up to the attic to see if somebody had stored it up there to make me mad. Not up there. And I came back down. I said, fellas, I'm sorry, but I cannot find this. I will look for it. And they said, the other thing we're looking for is this plaque, this big plaque. And I said, what is the big plaque? And they said, we know that you have some here. It is for the young men who died in the Indianapolis disaster from Michigan. And they showed me a couple of press cuttings, very old press cuttings. And I went, ooh, I would not have something like that here. But that seems like that should be fairly easy to find. And so it's like, well, it's been missing, for decades. And here's where it originally was. And it was supposedly in. They made it sound almost like it was in not a VFW hall, but a gathering hall, because the people who were in charge of it were, I think, VFW or something at the time. They were supposed to be the stewards of it until a new place could be built for it downtown in the new Civic Center. And so I thought the obvious person to call would be my buddy who's a curator at the Detroit Historical, because I thought, if you're going to demo a building back then and you had something that looked valuable, because I always have to play detective in my role, the first place I would go to is there, and secondarily then to the DIA and say, we have a giant brass plaque that might be worth something. We have a bust. We have a big statue. We're getting rid of the building. Do you want this thing? We'll drop it off right now in your parking lot. So I called my buddy, and he said, never seen it. It's not on the accession list. If I ever see it, I'll call you back. And I said, ace, that's a great deal. He found it about 2 months later.
Oh, my.
He found it.
Back up. Why did these gentlemen want to find it?
Because they were the organization, the legacy organization for the USS Indianapolis. Okay. And they were in from out of town, and they were like, we really, really, really want to find this. This is, the big connection to Michigan. Who could have this?
Well, let's stop here. We'll have a lot of veteran radio listeners who are not World War II age or World War II buffs. Mm-hmm. Tell us about the USS Indianapolis and its role in history at that point, and why this is memorable today.
The easiest way and the most obnoxious way to remind people of what it is remember when you saw the film Jaws, and Quint starts riffing on, we're going to have the sharks coming and it's going to be like the Indianapolis disaster. I was there, and he gets all crazy looking. And a lot of kids and young adults saw that when the film came out and went, I wonder what that is, but they never checked into it. That is the disaster that is discussed in the film Jaws. This is a situation where the guys were supposedly carrying very important parts. It was basically the mechanism for the atomic bomb for Hiroshima. They did not know that it was on their ship. They were just told, you're doing a top secret thing. You're to go at this stop. You're going to do it in record time. And then when you're done with that, we're going to send you off to do some drills over in the Philippines. And they're like, okay, cool. So they delivered the goods, not even knowing they had dropped off this, a monumental thing. And they were on their way then to these just ordinary drilling exercises. And a Japanese submarine, who the U.S. government knew was cruising in the area. There was 4 of them the government knew about and did not tell the captain of the ship, Captain McVeigh. Saw them, and just after midnight, nailed them one night. And
let me put some context around this in terms of dates. So this is July 30th, actually, of 1945. They've dropped off the parts for the atomic bomb that's going to end World War II, so we're almost at the end. There's 1,195 crew members on this heavy cruiser, the USS Indianapolis. A lot of guys.
Yeah. A lot of very, very young guys in their teens mostly.
And the worst thing in the world happens. They get torpedoed. The ship gets torpedoed. Yep. And sinks quickly.
In 15 minutes or less. There's reports between 12 and 15 minutes. The first torpedo, the first 2 hit the ship. And the first one tore basically the whole bow off. So the thing was continuing to go and just filling with water. The second one, a couple seconds later, hit the ammo in a couple of other compartments. And it just went straight down. So you had
really very little chance of evacuating or putting over the lifeboats or anything.
Correct. Very few lifeboats were out there. Some guys had on the inflatable vest. Most of the guys were trapped below. I mean, it happened that quickly. Immediately, the radios went out. They couldn't even call down and say, evacuate the ship. It was just a complete, really fast disaster. With guys who were also very green. They had just picked up most of the crew were young 17, 18, 19-year-old kids, and they had this was their first couple of weeks of being in service. So they had no clue what was going on.
So as I said, there's roughly 1,200 men on the ship, and not many survived. How many survived?
It got whittled down really quickly. They think there was I think it was about 800 in the water. I could be wrong on that. I'd have to refer to my notes. Within the first 24 hours in the water, it was down by a couple of hundred. And they were just they were covered in real heavy grade oil, which was actually sort of a blessing because the guys apparently that were that had less coverage were found easier by the sharks.
Yeah, one of the things that's just horrifying about this is that it happened so fast. As I say, maybe it's 800 guys and a couple of hundred, 200 to 300, I think it's 300 survive ultimately. The others succumb to the elements, and the elements include sharks, which gets you that modern movie reference you started with in Jaws. I mean, it's just horrific to think about these guys out there floating in the middle of the ocean. There were no distress calls, no nothing.
No, nothing. And the government abandoned them. They didn't show up where they were supposed to be the next day for the drilling exercises. Nobody went looking for them. So you have a bunch of kids bobbing around in salt water. So not knowing, they were thirsty, they'd start drinking the salt water, and literally, besides your tongue swelling up and your throat closing off, and it makes you mad. You go mad. So you had guys that were, seeing all kinds of crazy stuff, and I'm swimming to the ship there and swimming off and drowning. So they were watching each other do that and trying to talk sense into their compatriots who were basically killing themselves. A lot of the young guys, after a few days out there, were so depressed they just did kill themselves. They let go and they went under. And then there was, because of the blood in the water and guys with injuries, it was sharks. It was tiger sharks and I believe white tip sharks. And apparently it was very ugly. And thank God somebody finally, about the third day, flew overhead and couldn't believe what he saw.
Yeah, I wanted to get to that point because it's 3 days, like 3 days later, a plane happens to fly by. What's going on down there? Yep. Because they had no idea,
no clue,
where the Indianapolis was. And they had obviously lost contact. There was no radio contact with them. It went down so fast. It was almost accidental that they got discovered.
Yeah, he saw an oil slick. So he went down and he happened to be fooling around in the back of the aircraft trying to fix an antenna that was trailing. And he happened to look down, he saw an oil slick and he's like, wait a minute, do we have like a Japanese submarine down there laying, oil? I'm going to go down. So he went down to the surface and started seeing guys bobbing. And as he was calling back to the base, he's like, I've got like 10 guys down here. Wait a minute, I've got like 60 guys. Wait a minute, I got like 100 and some guys down here. They didn't believe him. They still would not believe him when he was calling back to the base. And he's like, move, go, do something.
It's hard to think. It's hard in 2025 to put your mind in what it was like in 1945, where there isn't kind of like all the sophisticated gear and information and beacons and radio wave signals for survivors and that. It was a whole different time. And the Indianapolis was on this secret mission to begin with.
Yeah.
And I guess the Navy didn't want to acknowledge it was lost or out there. It actually took the Navy a long time to let the U.S. public know that the Indianapolis went down. Talk about that. To me, that's crazy in a world of instant communication.
It was, some of the stuff they did was I can only say evil. First off, they didn't tell the captain that there was 4 subs that was cruising right in there. So it's like, why would you not tell the man to be extra careful? Why would you not give him an escort, which they found after the fact was available? He could have had an escort with him. When they kept calling in other airplanes, and ships just started diverting and talking, not even in code, saying, wait a minute, the bases aren't responding. We need to go. There's guys in the water. So all of those people could have been court-martialed that did that over the next few days. When they finally had everybody picked up and collected and back on land, the government decided to wait until they could do the announcement that the Japanese had surrendered, so that the main headline would not be huge disaster at sea, biggest naval, disaster ever. Guys are, finally back on dry land. The rest are lost. So you had them down in the bottom part as the secondary headline, in the huge letters everybody was reading was about the surrender, which is like one of the final insults, although they managed to continue by then court-martialing the poor captain.
Yeah, I want to talk about that too, because it's in your article, Hell Gone Mad for the War Memorial. But this whole idea that they sat on the disaster and didn't tell the families where they had perished, 900 some families, or the 300 some families where your son's still alive, for like 2 weeks. It was the 15th of August, 1945, because they waited until after the atomic bombs dropped, after Japan finally surrenders. Okay, now we'll slide it out. I had never focused on that kind of manipulation of public transparency.
It was just really evil. I mean, and it's like they kept compounding. So the government decides, with all this going on, then people are starting to go, wait a minute, what was this other thing that happened with these young kids? So they decide they're going to court-martial Captain McVeigh, saying, well, you didn't zigzag, and that's why you ended up getting hit, and so you endangered the crew and you've done terrible things, whatever. And it's like, it was said at the time that even if he zigzagged, the court-martial should not have happened, because he still would have been hit. Now, to really cap things off, the U.S. government brought in as their chief prosecution witness Captain Hashimoto, the guy that torpedoed the ship. So you have Perry Mason bringing in the murderer to talk about what went on. And the guy, Hashimoto, got in there and he said, they could have done anything on the planet. They were so close. They were under 5 miles away from me. I had them. I'm surprised every torpedo didn't hit them. There was no way this man could have escaped. He did nothing wrong. No zigzag, no nothing. They were going to die. And that was government.
McVeigh gets court-martialed. His career ends. It impacts the rest of his life.
Yes, very, very sadly. And his men testified for him. All the reunions, they still thought he was the greatest thing. They tried from the get-go to clear his name, going, no, this man should not have been court-martialed. They always called him captain, even though he had a paper, pay grade. He considered himself a captain, one of the guys, and that's what they referred to him as. Finally, when he was 70 years old, it just took too much of an emotional toll. He had not only survivor's guilt, but he had these mothers and whatnot who were going, you killed my son, you horrible man. And he walked out into his backyard and blew his brains out.
And today, we maybe have more focus than we had back then on veteran suicide, on the emotional, mental health impacts of service. And obviously, when you're responsible as a captain for 1,200 men and only 300 come home, you can only imagine what the burden that he had to carry on. And then the government, the Navy, the service he's given his life to, piles on and says, it's all your fault because you didn't steer the ship the right way. Just an awful story. And by the time the story gets fixed isn't the right word, but put back on the right path, it's too late.
Well, it came full circle really when you had the fellow who was the commander then of the Indianapolis submarine. There's been a variety of ships called the Indianapolis over time, and that was Commander Toti, Toti, and he was like, wait a minute. This guy should not have been court-martialed, and so he kind of, looking at it, Indianapolis to Indianapolis, he started raising a ruckus, saying, "Wait, this is complete nonsense. What happened?" So he started doing all kinds of tests with modern equipment and what they knew now. And he proved, and I spoke to him, and I wrote in the article verbatim what he told me. He says, I proved absolutely positively that there was no way, even if he zigzagged, he was not going to be hit. The whole thing, again, he should have never, ever been court-martialed. They were looking for a scapegoat, and everybody knew it. Nobody on the other side got in trouble. None of the military guys for not looking for them or not telling them that there was 4 subs out there. The sub one of the subs 2 days before had already blown up another American ship. They knew the 4 subs were out there. And then Hashimoto spent the rest of his life. He became apparently a Shinto priest, and he spent the rest of his life trying to clear McVeigh's name. Here he is, the guy that did it. It's like, I had nothing personal. This was orders, but no, the guy was railroaded by the government, and then you brought me in to testify against your guy. So it shows how outrageous it was. And
it also and wearing your mantle of historian here for the Grosse Pointe War Memorial, it also shows you how whatever we learn in the near term to a disaster may not be the real answer. We may not have all the facts, and only looking back in hindsight, and I think it was maybe 2000 Congress exonerated McVeigh. We're talking 35 years later or something, or 55 years later, he finally gets exonerated. There's really this lesson to be learned about how much credence you put in what we know today versus what we will know in the future when historians like you dig into things, talk to people, look at it from a different angle. There's a lesson to be learned there, isn't there?
There is, and there's also, I mean, you look at between Hashimoto and then the kid, literally the kid that really kicked everybody up the rear end, whether they wanted publicity because it was a high school kid for his History Day project, said, wait a minute, I've heard about this. There's no information out there. He had just seen Jaws. And he's like, how come I can't find information on the USS Indianapolis? So he went out and played detective, and he interviewed, he had about 800 documents that he physically went through. He interviewed 120 of the survivors at that point. And he was like, this whole thing is fishing. He did his History Day report, which I'm surprised this didn't go to the Nationals. It lost out in Florida. And I'm very involved in History Day, so that's what I also zeroed in. I was like, these are one of our kids. He went and he proved that this whole thing was a bunch of nonsense and laid it out. And he started making the rounds of the news shows, and then it escalated up to like the David Letterman show. And so people were like, well, what is this? Wait, what is this thing again? This was Jaws and this young kid and blah, blah, blah. And they started listening. So the right people got together around him and said, look, we can get you in to talk to Congress. Why don't you go and present what you've got in Congress? Toti came in, also was pushing as part of that. Joe Scarborough from Morning Joe was involved in this back when he was in Congress, and he laid out what the deal was. And the kid is actually probably the one who pushed over the top, getting McVeigh exonerated and getting the full story out as to what happened to these guys. Compliments of the military completely botching the whole thing.
Well, and you write about this 12-year-old. He was 12-year-old student in Florida. Hunter Scott's his name. This is 1997, and he kind of gets this all restarted again. It's really amazing story of how that gets going, and then we continue on. I see you, and you have pictures in your story which are really fascinating about the wreck of the USS Indianapolis finally being found in the ocean.
Yep. Yeah, they thought that would never be fun. It is so far down, it's way deeper than the Titanic is. It is about as far as you can go down in an ocean at the bottom. And because it's so far down and there's like no movement or anything down that far, it looks as if it just went down yesterday. There's no rust or anything on it. You can read very easily the number on the side. It's like, oh yeah, that's the Indy. Everything is right there and spectacular looking. So that was again, a bunch of civilians who went down. This wasn't the Army or the Navy or something doing looking for it. These were a bunch of civilians who said, let's try to find this one. We found some other wrecks. And again, it was people going, wait a minute, we got it now. See, this isn't right. Let's help. People keep telling the story to try to put the thing right.
There's so many little facts that if you gather them, they change the whole perspective. Mm-hmm. You started with a bit of a mystery of the missing plaque.
Yep.
What happened to the plaque?
The missing plaque. So Bill finds the plaque in the back of I call it the bubble car garage, in the very back of at Fort Wayne, the collections, the old collections building down for the Detroit Historical Society. He found that plaque, and next to it was the other plaque. I had asked him, if you ever find the plaque for Fred Elger, let me know. And he goes, Betsy, I found both of them together. And I'm like, oh my God. So it's like, okay, what are you going to do with the plaque? Because people need to see it. And obviously he gets to make the final call because he's holding the plaque now. So we give him the entire story of the parts we know. Like I said, this wasn't even in their records because they used to just take stuff in willy-nilly when it was under different management, when it was a city. And so we had a plaque unveiling a couple of weekends ago at the Detroit Historical Society. You can go down now and go to the Arsenal of Democracy section up on the second floor, and you can see the USS Indianapolis plaque that was for the 70-some young kids from Michigan who went down, and it was paid for by the parents of the boys who died.
Oh, thank God it didn't get melted down. I mean, you sort of go, oh no, did that get melted down somewhere along the line? So. And you have that again in your article, a picture of it, which is sort of moving, and it becomes. Did you ever find the other piece that the folks came to the front door and asked about, which is the with the signatures?
Did. I got a call from one of my buddies who's in our facilities department. He's like, "Hey, Bets, I'm in the bathroom right now, and there's this ship, and I've always wanted, this kid loves ships and shipwrecks and stuff." And I said, take a picture, not of you in the bathroom, but take a picture of what you're looking at, send it to me right now. So he texted to me, and I said, where are you? What bathroom are you in? He was in where the facilities guys go wee.
Oh,
I don't go in here. That's where the dudes do their, whatever. And I said, that thing is coming off the wall. Thank you very, very much. And so I got a hold of Jeff Ortiz and the guys. I said, we found it. It's in the maintenance guy's bathroom. So
that's hilarious. Actually.
So it was, I was mad. You don't put, something like that, which is almost a sacred artifact, into the loo for a bunch of guys. They asked then if they could show the piece of artwork. So that was also at the unveiling ceremony. I lent them that. So that was on an easel. People could look at that. The gentlemen who have signed it are all deceased now. And we rehung it. I spoke to our CEO and I said, this is going somewhere respectful. So it is right outside of our veterans room now, in the corridor going into the Fred Elger Center, where there's other military and historical things up on the wall. So everybody now can see it.
So let's use the last few minutes here. Let's talk about the Grosse Pointe War Memorial and its historic and continuing honoring of men and women who serve in the military.
Yeah, when the Elger House was dedicated and given over free of charge by Marion Elger, she said it's you can have this as long as it's for two purposes. Half of the mission is to honor veterans and those who never came back, and to put on programs, keep their memory alive, try to serve them. And the other half is for community stuff, classes, speakers, learning how to paint, things of that are cultural. That's what you're supposed to be doing with my house. Here is my estate. And so what we try to do internally is we have a veterans committee, that of some of us who are interested in veterans affairs. And we try to do something every month for veterans. We have a vet to vet meeting, and then every other month we have a speaker.
So the loss of the USS Indianapolis in World War II was a devastating naval loss, all kinds of men. So that puts you a little history in it, but you got to admit it's pretty funny that the painting, the artifact that really was trying to keep that history alive ended up being hung in the maintenance men's bathroom. So sometimes history's pretty damn funny. So let's have a few words from our sponsor, and then we're going to talk about another naval subject, which is shipbuilding and competing against our greatest rival for world power in the future, which will be China.
Military veterans touch everyone's life. I'm guessing right now you're thinking of a veteran, a close friend, relative. Maybe it's you. Even the toughest of us sometimes need help, but don't know where to turn for support. You don't need special training to help a veteran in your life. We can all help someone going through a difficult time. Learn how you can be there for veterans. Visit veteranscrisisline.net. veteranscrisisline.net. A message from the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs.
If you have a VA claim denied by the Board of Veterans Appeals, contact Legal Help for Veterans at 1-800-693-4800. They're experts in handling cases before the U.S. Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims. Their number again, 1-800-693-4800.
We want to welcome to Veterans Radio today Navy veteran Jonathan Page. Jonathan Page is a PhD, but don't hold that against him. We're going to talk about all things shipbuilding. John, welcome to Veterans Radio.
Morning, thank you. I'm happy to be here. I'm glad you found me, and always happy to talk about the Navy. As you know, you can take a man out of the Navy, but you can't take the Navy out of the man.
Well, and you're sitting now in the Midwest, and I know I often look back and say, I wish I was on the water again. I wish I was on the ocean. This storm had looked great on the ocean. So, yeah, I can relate that you can't take the sea out of the Navy man here. But let me set this up a little bit. So you are a native of Canton, Michigan, which is between Detroit and Ann Arbor. You went off to the Naval Academy. We're going to talk about that a little bit. You did active duty in the Navy, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And then you went on to a couple of interesting assignments as the Deputy Ship Design Manager for NAVSEA, Future Ship Requirements Officer for the Office of the Chief of Naval Operations for about 5 years, and now it's been a couple of years that you are a professor at the University of Michigan Naval Architecture and Marine Engineering School. So some very well-earned credentials in the field of ship planning and building. And that's a little bit what we want to talk about, because we saw you quoted in an article talking about how the Navy wants more young people to pursue careers in shipbuilding. So we'll get to that, and we're going to get to the current projects he's working on. But Jonathan, how did a nice kid like you from Canton, Michigan end up at the Naval Academy?
Yeah, great question to start with. I had no choice is kind of the funny answer. And
you were running from the law? Is that what you're suggesting?
Fortunately not. Not that I was the best high school performer. I got my fair share of trouble, but I also paid attention to grades, played soccer, ran track, National Honor Society, etc. Now, the almost comedic part of the story that comes full circle at the end is my parents did actually dig up the letter of rejection that I got from the University of Michigan.
Oh, there you go.
So as a senior in high school, I did not get accepted to the university where I now work. But I did still go through the process for the Naval Academy, talked with the soccer coach, And it was an alternate to the military academy. My dad had grown up in upstate New York. So during a family trip out there one summer in high school, we visited there. And short story is it didn't appeal to me. But then my dad, who is a Navy veteran himself, I should point out, served from 71 to 78, USS Incheon, among other things back when it was an LPH. He was like, "Hey, if you're interested in the military academy, there's this other one down in Annapolis, the Naval Academy. You should check that out." And he grows a little bit taller as he says it, because he's a veteran himself. So I said, "Sure, I'll check that out." And of course, it was great. You go and you visit the academy. It's beautiful. The architecture, the structure, you're right there on the bay. Everything that we Navy folks like. And so I continued to pursue it and everything involved in that with. Letters from senators at the time and was ultimately accepted because it was the only place I actually got accepted.
Well, it was really,
belief structure.
Yeah, you had a really narrow focus of what you wanted to do, and that, obviously made all the difference. Don't let him kid you, folks. He's got a hell of a resume academically. His bachelor's is from the Naval Academy in Systems Engineering. He has a master's in engineering management from MIT. He has a naval engineering degree from MIT, and I think your PhD in design engineering is also from MIT. So we're going to kind of not hold all of those degrees against you because you got all this great experience. Tell us about your experience in the Navy a little bit.
Yeah, so starting to pull the thread all the way through a little bit, I have always been interested in engineering. And so part of the decision was that Annapolis is known, the Naval Academy is known to have good engineering. And so while I was there, performed well enough that I was given an option to become an engineering duty officer. The first part of what that community likes is we want to make sure as we repair, acquire, and do all the things that the engineering duty community does with ships, we want to have served on ships. So we know what it's like for the sailors and officers that are out in harm's way months at a time. So started off on DDG 63, USS Steedham out of San Diego. I was the communications officer, but got fully qualified on the ship. For topside driving the ship, officer of the watch, officer of the deck, everything entailed with that, and earned my surface warfare pin on that ship under a slew of great leaders from Dave Moline to Charlie Williams and others before I transferred to the engineering community. So now instead of operating DDGs, now I was repairing them. So I went immediately to a qualification tour at Southwest Regional Maintenance Center, which is the hub of maintenance, repair, and modernization for the Pacific Fleet there, most of the Pacific Fleet, for the combatant fleet and amphibious fleet there in San Diego, and did some repairs on LHDs, and most notably had a really unfortunate and cool project where the main reduction gear on USS Halsey, DDG 97, it blew up for, just to shorten what actually happens. But main reduction gear severely damaged, so we have to perform open heart surgery, right, on a ship, right? We got to take out the guts. We got to take out the main reduction gear, the thing that takes power from the engines and puts it down the shaft, right? It's like the transmission of the ship. So we had to take out this 12 foot by 14 foot by 16 foot, 60-ton thing out of the middle of the ship and put in a brand new one, and then align it and get the ship back operational again. So just a really cool experience to kind of like take a ship apart and put it back together over the course of 7 months with that project.
Wow.
Yeah, just fantastic. Crawling around, diving in the bilges, looking at alignments, shaft alignments, gear bluing and teeth contact, and just learning all this cool engineering stuff and what really makes a ship literally go, right, and sail. Now,
are you in the West Coast at this point or the East Coast?
Correct. Still, this was in San Diego still.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. great question.
And let me back you up because I think I shortchanged you. How many total years did you have in active duty Navy?
21 years total.
Okay,
Yeah.
21 years active duty, and then these other assignments that I mentioned in the office of the CNO. That's after active duty.
No,
that's part of the active duty. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
Sir.
Got it.
Yes.
And what kept driving you to not only pick up the master's but the PhD and kind of these are great opportunities that the Navy was presenting and you took advantage of, it sounds like.
For the most part, slightly different, but yeah, the nuance difference. So for the master's degree, right after that repair tour, that's when I went to MIT the first time to earn the 2 master's degrees. As part of the engineering duty community, we want everyone, right? We are the technical leaders of the Navy. And so we need to make sure that we have good technical chops. And so everyone in the EDO community is required as part of their qualification to get a technical master's degree. And we have about 10 billets per year at MIT as one potential option to get that technical master's degree. So similar to the Naval Academy, I applied and I crossed my fingers and I hold my breath. And luckily, I was fortunate to be one of the ones accepted into the cohort that started in 2008 with a bunch of other great folks that are now, many of them are still in the Navy. The operations officer at Puget Sound Naval Shipyard was one of my classmates. Somebody running the dive locker for NAVSEA was another one of my classmates. Someone running Norfolk Naval Shipyard, another one. So just an incredible wardroom, incredible group of people that are also now still doing great things, still in uniform. So the EDO community required me to get those first 2 degrees. In between, right, it's sort of a little bit of a fast forward. Then I went and worked on DDG 1000, right? So I started on that ship when she was pieces and parts all around the shipyard up in Bath, Maine, and helped assemble her and resolve technical issues there, and got her to float off at least before I left that tour. And it was about a year or 2 before she left BIW on sort of the maiden voyage and the trials. After that, I went to NASCO, so back to the West Coast to be the supervisor of shipbuilding representative down there. Basically, the government oversight for the shipyard who was building the expeditionary staging bases for us. So I accepted delivery of the USNS Chesty Puller. Right, or excuse me, Lewis B. Puller. We all know him as Chesty. Hoorah, right?
Right.
But yeah, so USS Lewis B. Puller. So first ship of a class, but similar to that repair tour. Back crawling the ship with the contractor, with NASCO, with the folks working for me, looking at quality, looking at cost, making sure that the government, that the Navy is getting the product that we want out of those ships. And just a fantastic experience working through some of the issues with, drainage and AFFF for firefighting and some of these new systems for these types of ships.
Well, we probably could do a whole nother segment about the berthing quarters on ship and the relationship between real sleep and what's needed on you get on a Navy ship. We've talked to Dr. Cordell before on this issue. It's a real issue for Navy folks. But what I want to move forward on before we chew up a lot of time again is you've had that shipbuilding experience. And as we hear about the country's national security needs for a more robust Navy and that we're not keeping up with shipbuilding from places like Korea and certainly our adversaries in China, is that really a concern in the upper echelons of the Navy? And how do we attack it? It
is. So from my the last two experiences I had, where I was the deputy ship design manager and where I was on CNO staff, I was the future surface requirements officer. So helping to set requirements for future frigates and unmanned vehicles and future destroyers and everything that's sort of 5, 10, 15, 40 years out there. We do understand one way we can think about an issue sometimes is that quantity is its own quality, right? Meaning that right now, the U.S. Navy knows we have better ships, right? We have the best ships in the world, and we know we can be better. And we know China has more ships. What we don't want is that they have more ships and better ships. And so knowing that we have better ships, we know we want more ships so that that equation never heads in that direction. Right. So it is, we know it is important. And what we like is to hear that Congress is talking about it, the president is talking about it, the Navy is talking about it, industry is talking about it. It is bipartisan, bicameral. Everybody agrees, and everybody's speaking along the lines that, and it's not just military vessels. Part of the value chain for Japan and Korea and China is that they have a very robust commercial shipbuilding business as well that aids them being good at their military side of the business. So we understand we want to do the same, create a rising tide through the whole industry, both commercial and military. And so part of the language that we're trying to get leaders to start using is what we call the fourth coast, because we have the East Coast, we have the West Coast, we have the Gulf Coast, and then we have the Michigan coast, the Great Lake coast, right? So we have a lot of coast here that we can use where we can have shipyards. We have large bodies of water that are protected where we can run experiments and figure some of this stuff out before sending it out on the high seas. And so we're trying to create again, a language about the fourth coast here in the Great Lakes, where there's a lot of opportunity, a lot of skilled workers, a lot of talent in both manufacturing and engineering. And through that awareness, bring some of that business here to help the nation do what we need to do.
Yeah, this is Congress has to fund all this largely, except, if you're talking on the commercial side. But this is a long-term problem. It takes both shipbuilding yards and facilities, but it also requires the right type of people. And I think that's where I want to go next is talk about your view, because you've sat at the top of this thing looking down, about what we should be doing in terms of getting more people interested in shipbuilding, the maritime industry as a career.
Great question.
Yeah, nobody thinks about, at least in the Midwest necessarily, about a maritime shipbuilding career, being in the trades, and there's a lot of trades that have to be involved here. You're working on part of that pipeline at engineering schools, but part of that pipeline is not straight up PhDs, is it? It's really the trades.
A little bit of yes to all. So actually, yeah, you started sparking some neurons. So thank you for that. I think what the largest problem we have in terms of getting folks into these trades and disciplines is simply awareness. So part of it for the Midwest, for the state of Michigan, for the Great Lake region is we have great manufacturers, from the auto industry to others. We know how to build stuff here. We did it in World War II. We haven't forgotten that, right? We still know how to do that here. But part of what I've discovered in the 2 years here in Ann Arbor is people just aren't aware. We call it sea blindness. Many people aren't aware of the maritime trades and that 70% of the world is ocean. 80% of the population of the world lives within 100 miles of a coast. 90% of international trade goes by water, and like over 95% of data goes in undersea cables, right? It's all happening in the background that we in the sea services are kind of running the world, but we're just letting it happen. We're just moving goods and making things happen. And it doesn't really hit the news until a ship goes aground in the Suez Canal and brings everything to a halt. And then, Amazon deliveries don't get here on
right.
time.
Now we care. Now we care. Yeah.
Now, right. And so I found through awareness and awareness of the opportunity. Right. So here in the College of Engineering, any I'll say average high school senior gets accepted here to the College of Engineering. They already know, well, there's aeronautical engineering, there's civil engineering, there's mechanical engineering, chemical engineering. Nobody really knows that there is this thing called naval engineering that's its own discipline, that has its own specialties, that does this really cool thing, build the ships that make the world go round and move 90% of the goods that we look at in our houses every day. And so just giving them that awareness, and that there's opportunity, there are jobs, and actually well-paying jobs that contribute to that. Like people convert because it's fun, right? These ships, right? If you like complication and complexity, right? I mean, it's a floating city. It moves. It's got sanitation. It's got recreation. It's got mission equipment, right? That like firefighting, police, everything that you need ashore, like put it on a ship and make it move around the world, right? It's fun. To me, at least, the complexity is fun.
Well, it certainly is. It is a complex system. The bigger they are, the more complex they are. And you're a guy who's been thinking about, well, what's this going to look like 15 years from now or 20 years from now?
Right.
The speed of innovation on weapon systems and electronic systems and propulsion systems is really quite amazing. And I would think that's where a lot of the excitement that maybe people don't understand is there's all this technology happening.
Correct. And along those lines, and along the lines of Midwest sort of, Fourth Coast versus East Coast, West Coast, Gulf Coast, something else we need to realize, 70% of the value of a ship is created outside the shipyard. So it'd be great to have shipyards here and build ships in Fincantieri, right up, at our sort of northern border there or I guess the southern border of the northern peninsula, right there with Wisconsin, right? So they build frigates up there, and that's great. And having shipyards is great, but 70% of the value doesn't need to be at a shipyard, right? We can build pieces and parts. We can build pumps. We can build skids. We can build pipes and other things here in the Midwest to go to shipyards and help them be more efficient and effective at final assembly, so to speak. So just incredible opportunity in that sense as well here in the Midwest to really add value into the supply chain for these things, whether or not the shipyard is actually here. And so incredible opportunity for the trades, incredible opportunity for engineers. And I think just some of that awareness of being able to get into this business and industry is something that will help tremendously.
Yeah, real interesting. I would never have guessed that percentage, 70% of the values from stuff built outside the shipyard. That's a very interesting way to think about it. Let me switch gears to something else that you mentioned. You mentioned what's the future of unmanned vehicles that the Navy might use?
So there was, I think that we recognize that is an important piece of the capability that we need to build in our future fleet, that there are some jobs and some missions that are inherently conducted by humans, especially when you get to a point where you're pressing a button where something launches and goes somewhere, right? But there are other levels of automation, levels of autonomy for steering, for navigation, for machinery operation, where there are some incredible benefits that unmanned vessels or autonomy bring for the United States Navy.
I get the sense the commander, Dr. Page, was being coy and didn't want to go too far into the Navy's plans for unmanned vessels, probably a subject for the future. And we didn't actually get to talk about how artificial intelligence, or AI, factors into the Navy plan, so we'll have to have him back. Hope you enjoyed these two stories on naval history, naval future, some things to think about in terms of the United States national defense, and some of what's occurring throughout the world and why it's important that Congress fund and that communities support and people support naval shipyards. So great discussion. We're closing out the year here. Can't believe another one's gone by. And until next time, when Dale Throneberry is back and we get into 2026, we want to thank you for listening to Veterans Radio. I'm Jim Faussone. You can find our podcasts and things at veteransradio.org. And until next time on Veterans Radio, you are dismissed.